So things passed until the day after the funeral. So this is basically all over the course of a day. And about 3 o'clock of a bitter, foggy, frosty afternoon, I was standing at the door for a moment, full of sad thoughts about my father. I should think so, Jim. You've barely let yourself breathe, and it's very important to do that when you're grieving. When I saw someone drawing slowly near along the road. He was plainly blind. Judgmental, Jim. For he tapped before him with a stick, fair enough, and wore a great green shade over his eyes and nose. And he was hunched. That's got nothing to do with it. As if with age or weakness. Yep. And wore a huge old tattered sea cloak with a hood that made him appear positively deformed. I never saw in my life a more dreadful looking figure. I don't like Jim's attitude towards this man. Just because he can't afford a good cloak and is blind, he basically thinks he's a monster. He stopped a little from the inn, and raising his voice in an odd sing-song, addressed the air in front of him. Now, in the 1950 Disney film, right, this is a good piece of trivia. This character is played by John Laurie, who played Private Fraser in Dad's Army. So there's a little bit of trivia, like 20 years before Dad's Army, when he was still a young-ish man and not an old, like, we're doomed, we're doomed. But obviously because of that, we are going to have to do basically his Private Fraser's voice for this character. Will any kind friend inform a poor blind man who has lost the precious sight of his eyes in the gracious defence of his native country, England? Well, it's ruined it now. Well, we'll pretend he's one of them who's like, England, England, is really like, do you know what I mean? A bit too pro-union, if you know what I mean. Will any kind friend inform a poor blind man who's lost the precious sight of his eyes in the gracious defence of his native country, England, and God bless King George, covering his back, where or in what part of this country he may be now? You're at the Admiral Benbow, Black Hill Cove, my good man, said I. I hear a voice, said he, a young voice, so we're doomed. Will you give me your hand, my kind young friend, and lead me in? I held out my hand, and the horrible, soft-spoken, eyeless creature, I don't like this, gripped it in a moment, like a vice. I was so much startled that I struggled to withdraw, but the blind man pulled me close up to him with a single action of his arm. Now, boy, he said, take me in to the captain. He knows what he's tricked him. Sir, said I, upon my word I dare not. Oh, we're doomed, he sneered. That's it. Take me in straight, and I'll break your arm. And he gave it, as he spoke, a wrench that made me cry out. Has! Oh! Hey! One of my favourite things is a noise of alarm or pain that isn't like a normal, like, ow! Or like, oh! But it's like, oh! Has! Like that on his arm. Sir, said I, it is for yourself, I mean. The captain is not what he used to be. He sits with drawn cutlass. Another gentleman. Come now. March! Captain Mannering, interrupted he. And I never heard a voice so cruel and cold and ugly as that blind man's. Do you know what I mean about the language here? I'm not a fan of, really. I mean, obviously he's a baddie, but that's nothing to do with the fact that he's blind. It's like those people who are you ever watch that program where they like dug Richard III up, and loads of the people who were like, Richard III was a good man, which is completely possible, were like, but he can't have had a hunchback. A hunchback? He can't have had a hunchback. He was a lovely man. Oh, because a symptom of evil is scoliosis. That's like a few years ago that people were saying that. It really wound me up.
Basically just because they all fancied him. They're like, oh, do you know what I mean? It was horrible. Anyway, Jim is obviously the hero of this story, but I'm not a fan of the way he's talking about this fella. It cowed me, his horrible voice, his horrible, gross, blind voice, Jim says. It cowed me more than the pain, and I began to obey him at once, walking straight in at the door and towards the parlour, where our sick old buccaneer was sitting, dazed with rum. The blind man clung close to me, holding me in one iron fist. These are different times as well. We should say that. These are different times. 19th century this is written. We don't use these terms now. The blind man. We don't do that. The blind man clung close to me, holding me in one iron fist and leaning almost more of his weight on me than I could carry. Lead me straight up to him, and when I'm in view, cry out, "Here's a friend for ye, Bill. If you don't, I'll do this." And with that, he gave me a twitch that I thought would have made me faint, so he's like that on his arm again. Oh! Like that, really sharp like that. So he is horrible, this fella. It's like a kid, this guy. Between this and that, I was so utterly terrified of the blind beggar, problematic language this, that I forgot my terror of the captain, and as I opened the parlour door, cried out the words he had ordered in a trembling voice. The poor captain raised his eyes, and at one look, the rum went out of him and left him staring sober. He's it. Like that. The expression of his face was not so much of terror as of mortal sickness. He made a movement to rise, but I do not believe he had enough force left in his body. "Now, Bill," I said, "where you are," said the beggar. If I can't see, I can hear a finger stirring. Business is business, we're doomed. Hold out your left hand. Boy, take his left hand by the wrist and bring it near to my right. We both obeyed him to the letter, and I saw him pass something from the hollow of the hand that held his stick into the palm of the captain's, which closed upon it instantly. "And now that's done, we're doomed," said the blind man. And at the words, he suddenly left hold of me, and with incredible accuracy and nimbleness, skipped out of the parlour. It's a bit weird, isn't it? And into the road, where, as I still stood motionless, I could hear his stick go tap, tap, tapping into the distance.